Hello, this video concerns itself with the funding of Pennsylvania's community colleges, an exercise that proves to be an evolving challenge. Historically, the mission of the community college in both Pennsylvania and nationwide is to be the access point for anyone who wants a higher education. We specialize in the idea of transfer credits, career degrees, and specialized workforce training. Ultimately, the community college is often said to be all things to all people, and while that's one of its strengths, it's also one of its inherent weaknesses in terms of funding. What I mean by this challenge is that the community college open door policy comes with a price. None of the programming that we provide is free. Instead, it's a cost that continues to rise. In fact, in Pennsylvania, the cost of educational programming have gone up, but state funding has stayed flat, level, for the last 10 years or more. And the diagram on this page depicts that. If you look at the blue line with the diamonds, you'll see that between 2002, 2003, and the 2012-2013 school year, that the level of funding had stayed at approximately about $200 million for the 14 different community colleges in Pennsylvania. In fact, this graph further demonstrates how higher education appropriations in Pennsylvania overall had grown prior to the recession and reached their highest peaks in the 2006 through 2009 school years, and then sharply dropped off around the 2010-2011 school year, so that they reached record lows in 2011, 2012, and 2013. So we see that the overall appropriation to higher education has been something that has been dropping, and therefore presenting a lot of challenges to all schools, including community colleges in Pennsylvania. So what is the breakdown then in regards to where PA funding comes from for its community colleges? Interestingly enough, the data for this page comes from the State Funding for Community Colleges document from 2000, and it's safe to use this data, even though it's a bit dated, simply because the funding simply hasn't changed. There's been a lot of discussion about funding in Pennsylvania and how we fund our community colleges, but there's been very little movement in regards to how things have changed, and that's ultimately one of the problems. 36% of the funds come from the state coffers. 19% come from local funds, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. 36% come from tuition and fees that are paid by students. 4% come from other sources, and only 5% come from federal funds. So when we talk about the idea of local funds and local funds being raised for community colleges in Pennsylvania, it breaks down to one of two options. In most cases, it's going to break down to sponsoring school districts that give money to the community college, and then residents from those districts are able to attend the college at a reduced rate. The non-sponsoring school districts don't pay money to the college, and therefore their members from their community and their school district would pay a higher rate. So for example, with Philadelphia Community College, the sponsoring school district rate is $153 per credit hour, whereas the non-sponsoring school district rate is double that at $306 per hour. So obviously the incentive is for school districts in that area to become sponsors. In some instances and in some part of the state, particularly parts of the state where there are fewer school districts, you'll have sponsoring counties or municipalities, and this is more popular in the rural areas of Pennsylvania. So what exactly does a student pay when they're going to community college in Pennsylvania? Well, the rates vary from school to school and area to area, but because I work at Harrisburg Area Community College, which we call HAC, you can see a little bit about what students pay and how it breaks down. They certainly pay their tuition, which for a sponsored in-state resident is $152.50 per credit hour. There's a $3.50 activity fee, 50-cent campus revitalization fee, a $10 institutional fee, a $22 technology fee, so that each credit hour ultimately for a sponsored in-state resident becomes $188.50. And then obviously if someone's taking 12 credits, that translates to $2,262 per semester. Obviously there are also rates for out-of-state residents as well as non-sponsored in-state residents. So what are the challenges then in regards to funding for community colleges? Well, ultimately and above all is the decreased state funding that has occurred during the last few years, and we demonstrated that in some of our earlier slides. In fact, it's been enough of a decrease that the president of my college, HAC, Dr. John Slajewski, has been quoted as saying that flat funding lately is good funding, simply because there wasn't a drop. The other challenge is that some sponsoring school districts are asking to reduce funding due to their own fiscal challenges. So the decreased state funding is also found its way into school districts. So they are also trying to balance their own budgets, and they're looking for ways to do that. And sometimes they believe that not giving as much to the community college is a way to do so. So for example, at HAC, roughly $8 million per year comes from our sponsoring school districts. That's actually going to be cut down to about $4 million over the next 2 or 3 years. So you can see that's going to create quite a substantial drop. The increased cost of programs, so to run a nursing program or a dental health program or a heating, ventilation, air conditioning program, obviously the costs go up year to year for materials and for instructional time and things like that. And the other challenge is that unlike universities, community colleges rarely have other sources of revenue. So there's not money coming in for research, and there's not money coming in for many of the other things that a larger college would have. These funding challenges too have forced colleges to try to find creative funding solutions, and in some cases that's resulted in things such as the increased use and reliance on foundations such as the HAC Foundation. The example I have here talks a little bit about the HAC Foundation. In this case, the HAC Foundation has endowments that consisting of more than 200 individual restricted funds that total over $25 million, and they're used for many things to support the college, to support its students, and to support scholarships for the students. These challenges have brought about many other creative funding solutions in addition to the use of foundations. These can include the development of partnerships with business, the lobbying of the legislature and the governor for more money or bills that better support community colleges. So for example, one bill that's been discussed is the expansion of the Educational Improvement Tax Credit. Currently, that tax credit option is only available for companies to give money or donations to K-12 schools, but they're looking to try to expand it to the community college level. There could also be the development of for-profit ventures and the expansion of non-credit offerings that could be used as revenue sources. The funding challenges of the community colleges, coupled with stagnant or decreasing enrollments, have forced colleges to make some very hard choices in recent years, and these include things such as program closures and furlough of staff. Ultimately, these cuts and reorganizations threatened the dream and the promise that state leaders brought to light through the Community College Act of 1964. So 50 years later, we stand in a precarious position, and unless we can find a way to right the ship, we're in danger of losing that dream, that original promise.